Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew, and tonight I want to welcome back to the show author, talk show host, and considered to be the Einstein of biblical prophecy, Peter Kling. How you doing tonight, Peter?
Very good, Chris. It's a pleasure to be back on your show.
Awesome. I got a lot of stuff to talk about, but it's been a while since you've been on, so why don't you give everybody just a brief bit about your background?
Oh, that's hard to do in a brief bit, but let's just say I'm gifted, and I come from a long line of folks who have been gifted in knowledge of the Bible, and I was taught biblical prophecy and history, not religious dogma and doctrine. However, I've had my own experiences at a very early age, which led me to search for answers using scientific method. So I actually became a scientist and not a minister, and so that's why, hence the Einstein of biblical prophecy. I've had a lot of very interesting things happen throughout my life, which have no normal, reasonable answer, let's put it that way. It's been a very paranormal life.
Yes, and you've also had contact or possible abduction experiences as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. And, that's something that is on a lot of people's minds, our contact with aliens. And I can't say that I was abducted because I went willingly. And this was shortly after my 18th birthday. And before I graduated high school, back in the days of von Daniken's book, Chariots of the Gods. And it's interesting, we start off an adventure in life, and sometimes we don't get the answers that we've been searching for until we get toward the end of that adventure. Because, well, that was a very alien situation. I'm going to say these creatures looked a lot like us, very human looking, and they didn't take me to any spaceship. They took me underground. Now, should we talk about Antarctica? Aliens underground in Antarctica? Imagine that. How about that? Yeah. So it's interesting. There's a lot of things that are out there which are going on right now. Ask yourself why Trump needs a space force.
Oh, I want to get into that, definitely. I mean, like you said, there's so much going on right now. We're living in amazing times that I never thought I'd see, but it's also, terrifying in plenty of aspects. I mean, we've got this whole push for transhumanism going on, and now this new advent of ultra censorship going on. With all this and plenty more, how do you see the events occurring right now relating to biblical prophecy?
Well, we're on a timeline, and for the first time, unless you study the Bible and really study and comprehend, and there are some people, I'm actually impressed. I've listened to some younger people, in their 20s, early 30s, who have a really good concept of the scriptures for what they are and the prophecies for what they are, and I applaud that. Excuse me just a second. Okay. Let that go to the answering machine. I do applaud that, just from the very aspect that people today still look to the Bible for questions and to answer their questions. And here's the thing. We've been fed this whole doctrine of the Bible, and everybody says, the Bible this, the Bible that, it's all religious. Blah, blah. No. We move the doctrine and dogma away from the scriptures, and what you have is something that could be called 6,000 years of alien intervention in human affairs. But you see, first we have to identify the humans, because not all of us are the same. And this we can all start extrapolating once we remove the dogma and doctrine. And that happened with me about... It was about 1981. I was actually reading the book of Job, and Yahweh asked Job, "Have you seen my storehouses of ice and snow, which I have saved for the day of distress and war?" And I'm thinking, I'm working in one of the best laboratories in the United States, waiting for a batch to develop there. It was actually in cool down, so I had some time, and I thought, what would Job know about snow and ice? And I had learned to meditate some years earlier. When I was 22, I learned a scientific way of meditation based on Edgar Cayce, not based on any Eastern philosophies, but actually based on scientific research. Our brain operates at different speed levels, kind of like shifting gears in your car. And for optimum meditation, we want to shift to like the lowest gear. So, and you slow our minds and our brain down, the vibrations of our brain. And once we start slowing it down, we can actually free ourselves from the limits that we have in the physical body from the third dimension. And the third dimension isn't, well, it's 3D to us, it's actually dimensions 8, 9, and 10, according to string theory, which makes a lot of sense. And according to string theory, we could not exist without 7 other dimensions preceding us. In other words, 7 spatial planes that would exist before the 3 physical planes in which we were created, dimensions 8, 9, and 10. And so Genesis says in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So there's a lot of science in the Bible, but you got to know the science to do it. And a lot of the science, when I started down this path, the only thing that we really knew, besides mathematics, we were starting genetic engineering. I remember I was 13 years old listening to a meeting of world genetic engineers at that time, and they were trying to figure out where to draw the line between genetic engineering and playing God. So already at that age, I started studying chemistry when I was 10. I started studying the Bible before I was at the age of 5. And I had a total comprehension of what was written from Genesis to Revelation by the time I was 6 or 7. I didn't know word for word, but I comprehended the total story.
Right.
So it's all there, where we came from, why we're here, and what our future is, but you have to know how to decipher it. So where are we in the stream of time?
Yes.
Yes. You see, that's the big question, because a lot of things have been happening which fulfill biblical prophecy. But if you're not aware of those things, you don't pay any attention to the Bible. It's like
most people aren't paying attention either way nowadays.
Well, that's just it. And society, when I say we, society has gotten sucked into cell phones, smartphones, which has made society dumber. And the reason why they've gotten sucked into it is because in 2002, a patent was put forth to develop an algorithm that is presented across all computer monitors, and that's all we have now are computer monitors, whether it's a flat screen TV or whether it's your smarter than you phone. But they send out an algorithm to change our physiology. And the original purpose was when computer programming was becoming more and more of a way of, or an occupation. You just had people spending long hours in front of computer screens, becoming fatigued. And so what they would do is they would play these algorithms and they would transmit a pattern to our subconscious mind that what we were doing at the computer would make it enjoyable. So essentially, think back if you saw the movie 2001, or if you read the book, Arthur C. Clarke's 2001, where the monolith first appears and there's all these ape-like creatures around it. Well, in order to get the ape-like creatures to start to develop, when they accomplish a task, they're given a sexual gratification or a feeling of sexual gratification. And so basically we find the same thing with a computer, not that we have sexual gratification, we get some sort of gratification. If you're into whatever you're into, playing Mission Impossible or what is it, Call of Duty. I don't play any video games, right. But if you're playing Call of Duty, you're actually absorbing these algorithms, and so it makes you more into Call of Duty or even things like Candy Crush. You know how many people I've heard play Candy Crush, never once played the game, saw the app on my computer and said, seriously, why do I need Candy Crush on my computer? So it's like, okay, but they get involved with this, and not that it's bad, but you get a gratification from it. and it's an instant gratification, and it's all due to the algorithms that are and the pulses that are transmitted through the computer monitors. And remember, this was a technology that was issued a patent in 2002. That was 17 years ago. What do you think we are now?
Right.
You want to talk about mind manipulation? What do you think? Why do you think we've gotten to this point where nobody can think? It's all mass psychology now. And that's why you've got all of these different movements and different groups. And there's so much division, and there's so much going, so much that divides the world. Even with the president, you know, he with this whole report, the president has been found not exonerated, but no Russian collusion. But we don't know if he obstructed justice here. Well, wait a minute. If there was no crime committed, how could obstruction of justice take place? You see, just ask that simple question. I'm not an attorney. But if you didn't commit a crime, how do you obstruct justice in stopping an investigation into that crime? You know, okay, so wait a minute. There's an investigation into a crime that was never committed? What the hell's that? So you know, we can see that there is so much discord within our world today. And so what's the explanation? Where are we? When we start looking at it from a viewpoint over society, we start to say, hey, things are pretty messed up. They've never been this messed up before.
Well, now let's take a pause for a minute and go back to the technology side. I've heard many refer to cell phone technology as basically a black mirror in your hands. They use so much occult aspects through technology, through media, through TV to kind of program us to get used to these occult symbolism, and it just gets pumped into us every day.
Absolutely. I wrote about that in Letters to Earth, symbolism. Go ahead.
I see it more prevalent now. They're trying to hide the symbolism less. And, you know, like you said, the kids walking around just glued to their cell phones nowadays, it has such a power over them, and it's just getting worse. I mean, you know, I don't see where we could possibly go in a good way within the next few years with this coming technology.
Well, we're not going in a good way. We're going in on a very destructive path. And we can see that within our own government, where there's no support for a duly elected president. I don't care if you don't like the fact that he was didn't have the popular vote. Oh, well, guess what? He had the Electoral College vote by a landslide, basically. So he was duly elected. And there'll be a lot more coming out with this. But this is also part of biblical prophecy. What? Trump being attacked? No. What Trump is doing what is Trump doing? You see, that this is we'll get to that in a minute, but I want to digress just a little bit and go back to where are we? We had something very significant happen, and this was, interestingly enough, a date that I called in 2010, October of 2010, and it sent me on a path to look for the answers. But there were two things that I came across. The first date that I gave as a change in the timeline was 2013, 3/13/13. The other date that I said we needed to be careful of is 4/14/14. Now, at the time, October 2010, 10/10/10, hello. I couldn't find any information on 3/13/13, but I found plenty of information on 4/14/14. That was the start of the tetrad blood moons. Now, most people don't even have any knowledge of this, but there were 4 blood moons, tetrad blood moons, and they all landed on Hebrew high holidays, either Passover or Rosh Hashanah. There are at least 6 biblical prophecies that say when the moon is turned to blood and the sun becomes like sackcloth of hair, in other words, doesn't give its light, those are signs of the last days. Okay? That's actually one of the final prophecies given. That is probably a Nibiru event, most likely a brown dwarf star passing through our solar system. Most solar systems are binary stars. Here comes our binary. So, and because it's a brown dwarf star, you don't see it. It doesn't really shine that much. But it's talked about within Scripture. Malachi, the 4th chapter, the second verse talks about the sun, S-U-N, of righteousness with healing in its wings. And now the interesting thing is that the passing of this sun of righteousness with healing in its wings causes death and destruction to those who are the unrighteous and the presumptuous. But those who have respect and fear for the name of God, Yahuwah, Yahweh, or Jehovah, to you, it says the Son of Righteousness will shine forth with healing in its wings, and you will become like fattened calves and go pawing the ground. It goes on in verse 3, says, your enemies will become like dust under your feet. Oh, think about that for a second. How does one event destroy so many? Because in verse 1 it says the day is coming that is burning like the furnace, and neither root and to the presumptuous ones and the unrighteous, they will become like chaff, and they will be burned up, and neither root nor bough will be left of them. So in other words, the whole family tree gone. So something to think about there. So
Yeah, definitely. And I'm
I'm
glad you mentioned Nibiru, because I cover Earth changes on my news reports, and the planet is going through some major changes right now. All kinds of things we've never seen before, and there's a lot of speculation that it may have something to do with the incoming brown dwarf that you mentioned.
Absolutely. Now the others. Now here's the interesting thing. I'm going to tie this up and then bring it back. The last of the tetrad blood moons happened on the 29th of September. Interestingly enough, that's possibly the date that Jesus was literally born on. Most biblical scholars put his birth date between the 29th of October and the 29th of September and the 4th of October. So it's not December 25th. That's Saturnalia. It's a Roman pagan holiday where they sacrificed children and carried on orgies. Go do the research. Right. And nothing to do with Jesus. It was sun worship, S-U-N, not sun worship, S-O-N. So there's a difference, major difference. We only know the date of Jesus' death, Nisan 33 A.D. or C.E., Common Era. But here's what we saw on the last of the tetrad blood moons. Just before that, the UN General Assembly ended on the tetrad blood moon. We saw the Pope giving his support to the post-2015 development agenda at the UN. But before we saw that, we saw this Pope standing in America's holy places. We saw it. Now, keep in mind, the United States of America was founded on separation of freedom and based on our personal freedom, our God-given freedoms, and the separation of church and state. And what did we see? We saw the head of the largest religious organization on earth, who's trying to form a one-world government, by the way. A one-world religion, essentially to head over a one-world government, because this is what our founding fathers realized. They realized that religion causes monarchies. Religion makes monarchies. Monarchies rule with ultimate rule over the people, and they did not want the United States to become a monarchy. They wanted it to be a republic, a nation for the people, ruled by the people. So separation of church and state was tantamount. And what did we see at the end of September 2015 with the Pope standing in America's holy places, standing at the Capitol, telling our deep state of lawmakers to here's your 2015 development agenda? And what did we see? We saw one patriotic American burst into tears. The Speaker of the House burst into tears during the Pope's speech and resigned his position on the spot. What did that tell anybody? You see, now we're getting the backlash from that, because you have both Republicans and Democrats who stood up and cheered the Pope's words.
Right.
And now you got a president that is against globalism, that is against mass migration and illegal border crossings. He's standing in opposition to this Pope, interestingly enough. And that's why the deep state hates him, because they're all being controlled by the Vatican. All roads lead to Rome. Every president since Ronald Reagan has been a Knight of Malta, a subject to the King of Rome, the Pope. The ruling Pope rules over the knights. The Knights of Malta and the other knighthoods make the laws of the land. Reagan, Knight of Malta. Daddy Bush, Knight of Malta. Clinton, Knight of Malta. Baby Bush, Knight of Malta. Barack Hussein, stooge, Knight of Malta. He wasn't an actual knight. He was one of their stooges. He had a letter of endorsement from the Knights of Malta. They weren't about to let him become a member of their club. They used Barack Obama to the best of their ability to destroy the United States of America. Just that simple. Clinton was supposed to take over in his footsteps and turn this into a globalist one world government and end the United States as we know it. And
So
that's where we're facing here.
These names you just mentioned, I mean, do you really see that Trump is going to basically take them down, do what he says, that they're going to be in Guantanamo Bay? Do you see this occurring even in the next couple of years?
Short answer, yes. And the reason was this. In 2015, when Trump threw his hat in the ring, I said, that's going to be the next president of the United States. Everybody thought it was a joke, right? Why did I say Trump was going to be the next president of the United States? He was standing in front of the military flags when he gave his address to become a candidate for president of the United States. And that told me the military was backing Trump. The other thing was the prophecy given in 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter, where it talks about the man of lawlessness, and that the man of lawlessness would need to be exposed before the great apostasy comes. And don't we see a lawless class ruling over us in Washington, D.C.? And who do they answer to? The man of lawlessness himself. Now, here's where we go back to 3:13:13. What happened on 3/13/13? Something I couldn't foresee, but I knew it was going to be an important date. The world got its first illegal Pope of the Catholic Church over the Holy See. A Jesuit was brought to the office of Pope, going totally against Catholic canonical law. In other words, the laws that the Catholic Church set up to govern itself, the Jesuits broke and sat an illegal Pope on the throne at the Vatican. Very, very significant. And so now we come to another prophecy in Revelation, the 11th chapter. There's actually given 3 periods of approximately 3.5 years each, okay? And it starts off, John is given a rod to measure the sanctuary of the temple. In other words, the holy and the most holy. Now, why would John be given a rod? Well, he was told to measure it. It was a standard that he was given, kind of like a ruler or a scale. If you do any kind of precision metalworking, you don't use a ruler. You use a scale to make sure that all of your measurements are precise down to the 1,000th or 10,000th or 100,000th of an inch. He was given a rod to make sure the temple sanctuary was up to standard. But he was told not to measure the courtyard. Now, the courtyard was given to the nations. In Judean law, no Gentile could enter the courtyard. So now why is the courtyard given over to the nations to be trampled down? Good question. We got an illegal pope ruling over the, quote, Christian religion of the earth. It's nothing more than that Christian is just a paint of white coat over the deepest, darkest satanic religion on the planet.
Right.
Regardless. Yes. And we're going to get into just a little bit more explanation when we get over to the alien situation in a few minutes. So here we have an illegal pope who's telling the first country to be founded on separation of church and state. He's giving our political leaders their marching orders. Now, my family helped start the Reformation with Martin Luther. We helped hide Martin Luther while he translated the Bible from Latin into German so it could be then given to the people of Germany, and they could see what it said for what was written in the Bible itself. And the whole reason for the Reformation is Martin Luther was exposing the church for the advantage it was taking of the people. A lot of people say, oh, they were selling indulgences. No, they were extorting the people. It was his 95 thesis on all the religion, on all the rules within the Bible that was set out that gives us our, quote, freedoms, our God-given freedoms and rights that the church was breaking 500 years ago. What's changed? Nothing. Nothing. If anything, the church has become even more illegal, involved in the two largest money makers on the planet. Number one, drugs. Number two, human trafficking. Let's see. Human trafficking even as refugees. So we bomb out these people's countries. They have no more homes to live. And then they have mass migrations into, our countries. The countries that sent them all the bombs. They must be real happy that we're accepting with open arms.
Right.
Patton would have, or Eisenhower would have loved to have this, 2 million, 3 million, quote, refugees in Europe now. And out of those, the government intelligence agencies have said between 15 and 25% are terrorists or extremists, not necessarily terrorists, but extremists. They have extremist views. So let's see, let's do the math. Let's say there's 3 million, and let's make it easy, 20%, that's 600,000. Is that what that comes out to? Yeah, 600,000. How many divisions is that? 60 divisions? 60 military divisions? Like I said, Eisenhower would have given his eye teeth for that one. Yeah, have 60 military divisions invading Europe. Think about that. Think about that. So get ready. Hold on. It's going to get real interesting as time goes on.
So do you think the Vatican is ever going to be brought down? I mean, this seems pretty untouchable.
How do you destroy a world empire? Let the children speak. You see, let's go back to what Trump did in 2017. December 21st, 2017, he issued an executive order which dealt directly with human trafficking and conspiracy, aimed right at the Vatican and right at the deep state. The deep state, which is funded by the central banking system. So, yeah, get ready. The man of lawlessness is about to be exposed. We have an illegitimate pope, a man of lawlessness. He's a Jesuit. He's trying to form a one-world government and a one-world religion. Now, I'm not going to say we're not going to have let's go back to what Daddy Bush spoke about, the New World Order.
Breaking up there, you said you wanted to go back to
World
what?
Order. Daddy Bush, George Bush, H. Bush, George Bush Sr., when he started running for president and when he was president, he talked about the 1,000 points of light and the New World Order that was coming and how they were. He was talking about the churches promoting a one world government, which is part of this post-2015 development agenda. So already back then, as a Knight of Malta and a servant of the Church, of the Pope, he was setting out the agenda for a one world government under rule by the Vatican. Now, that is the New World Order. Get ready, because there will be a one world government, or a type of one world government that is coming, but not yet. Let's go back to Revelation 11. 3 time periods given, each approximately 3.5 years. When did Pope, and by the way, I made the reference back to my family to helping start the Reformation, because we denounced the church along with other families, and when Martin Luther did, we stood by him and supported him. The church hunted us down and murdered my family for almost 300 years. It was stopped by the Napoleonic Wars. So we're scattered all over the place and have had several name changes in the process. Name modifications. The original name used to be Kling and Schmidt. And all I knew about my family up until 2016 is that we were bell makers. We made bells. And I figured, well, if we made bells, we must have made armor too. And yes, indeed, that's what we did. And if we made bells, guess who the largest client was? Who bought our bells? The church.
Of course.
Yeah. So we were a successful family that made a politically wrong move. That sounds familiar. I must be genetically inherent. Anyway, yeah, I've upset a lot of apple carts when I wrote Letters to Earth. So there's just too much truth there. I got a lot of warnings, and then the fun started. But regardless,
so earlier you had mentioned an alien connection.
Yeah, we're going to make that alien connection. But let's look at the 3.5 year time periods for a total of 9.5 years. I'm sorry, 10.5 years. First 3.5 years. When do they start? When did this time start? When the world got its first illegal pope. At least that's my theory or thesis on this. If we count from when the Pope was elected in 2013, and count 7 years, 2 periods of 3.5 years each, when does that bring us? What does that bring us to? The 2020 election. Doesn't it? And so then there's one more period of 3.5 years after that. And you see, it's during that 3.5 period, that 3.5 year period, that the 2 witnesses of Yahweh are put to death. They're killed, and their bodies are left to rot in the streets for 3.5 days. But on the but after that time period, the breath of life is brought back into them, and they start prophesying again. And it's an interesting, read the 11th chapter of Revelation. It's interesting how that all works out. So yeah, for 3.5 more years after the church is brought down, we will be under a one world government. This will be the image of the wild beast, the 666. Now, if Trump exposes all the pedophilia, all the human trafficking, and even worse, the child sacrificing that the church has been involved in through the Ninth Circle and the P2 Freemasons in Rome, then people are going to want religious heads on a platter. And we've already seen this with the second most powerful, I guess it's the second most powerful man next to the Cardinal Pell, who was the Pope had to basically excommunicate, and he is going to be serving some prison time here. Why? For his cover-up of human trafficking and child abuse, pedophilia, and no doubt that that was a lot of that wasn't even allowed to be released to the general public.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sure
we haven't heard anything about that.
Into that.
Yeah, we definitely haven't heard anything about. I haven't heard anything about that.
Yeah, and the Pope a few weeks ago held a worldwide synod where everybody, all these bishops were to come into Rome, and their discussion was how to keep children safe from pedophilia priests. Wait a minute. How to keep children safe from the pedophiles who are in the church?
Yeah, that's a ridiculous statement that you'd even have to say that.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Why don't we get rid of the pedophiles in the church, and then we don't have to worry about the children being safe? No, we can't get rid of the pedophiles, which should all be headshot. But we got to figure out a way to stop them from attacking the children so the public finds out. Go look and see how many orphanages the Catholic Church runs. Go find out how many convents are still in existence. These convents are basically breeding grounds. And those children that are bred from these nuns that go to service, they're used in child sacrifice. Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely. There was a convent in Spain. It was a cloister, and if I recall correctly, they found nearly 1,500 infant remains in this one deep basement. It was like under the bell tower somewhere, where they just disposed the bodies, threw them down this pit, and it was about 1,500. I'm trying to remember. But here's a number for you. 2011, the Catholic Church was involved. It was exposed that the Catholic Church was involved in the human trafficking of over 300,000 infants, literally right out of their mother's wombs. This has been over the past 50 years. Women who were deemed, women who were good targets were told that their children died. This happened in Spain. This is out of Spain. They were told that their children died after childbirth, and they disposed of the child's body, and here they kidnapped the child and sold it to the highest bidder.
It's amazing that there are people still defending the Catholic Church after, all the revelations that have already come out, and just the things that are true because of the things you've already heard, and you can put things together quite easily. It's a certain kind of evil that has to be doing this.
Without a doubt. I mean, if you now have to question whether the Satanic Empire is real, maybe you ought to look in the mirror and take a look at who you are and figure out whether you're real. Because this stuff is going on, and it will be exposed. It's being exposed as we speak. With the president, it's going to be turnabout is fair play, so they say. Now the president is being that there's no Russian collusion. Oh, well, who colluded with the Russians? Let's find out. Who sold off the uranium? Who invented the false dossier? Where did all this come from? Deep state. Who runs the deep state? The Vatican. All roads still lead to Rome. Let's look at it. Let's go in a little deeper. Something else happened in 2013. It wasn't just the election. I do want to make one other thing. Just digress with these tetrad blood moons. Along with the tetrad blood moons, because of the prophecy about the moon being turned to blood and the sun being turned dark. It's dark as sackcloth of hair, Revelation 6 says. I didn't mention that there were also 4 solar eclipses on Hebrew holidays as well. 2 full, 2 partial. So here on Hebrew holidays, you had the tetrad blood moons on the 2 most important, Passover and Rosh Hashanah, and you had the sun going dark on 4 other high Hebrew holidays throughout that time period. Actually, one being that the Hebrew New Year in December starts, actually. But regardless, all on important Hebrew holidays, you had these so these astrological events taking place. This is a foreshadow, because they end with the interesting thing. You go to Matthew, the 24th chapter, 14th, 15th verses. The apostles want to know, what are the signs? What's going to happen? And Jesus is telling them throughout Matthew, the 24th chapter. It's a great chapter to read because it kind of lays it out in more realistic terms. And it's things that we see going on, happening now at an unprecedented level. But what he says is very interesting. Jesus said, when you see the thing the disgusting thing that causes desolation, is spoken about in the book of Daniel, then in parentheses it says, let the reader use discernment. Interesting. It goes on to say, then let those in Judea begin fleeing to the mountains. Let those in the city of Judea begin fleeing to the mountains. Let those in the cities begin fleeing to the mountains. See, in a later time, it's not just focused on Jerusalem, because we have a worldwide application now, because we've got a worldwide situation. We're dealing with everything on a planetary scale. So when we catch sight of the religious, disgusting things standing in America's holy places where it shouldn't be, it's time to go. It's time to be prepared. That happened in 2015. Okay, 3.5 years ago, a little bit more now. Okay? We have another 3.5 year period. We're coming up. We're coming up. It's getting to be time. So all these dates are starting to fall into place. When we look at that event matching up with biblical prophecy, now let the reader use discernment. We know that the Pope himself was involved in human trafficking when he was a priest in Argentina. He was never indicted over it, but he was mentioned in a human trafficking indictment. We know, based on his position and his red shoes, that he's involved in child sacrifice. Okay, and I'm not going to just say we can assume. We know. Give it time; it'll come out. So when we look at this disgusting thing standing in America's holy places, we should be shocked. We shouldn't be cheering. We should be weeping in tears and resigning our post, because our country has been officially sold out. And now Donald Trump and the patriots and the military are in the process of taking it back. But remember, the pendulum swings both ways. And the seeds are also being planted for the image of the wild beast now in what Trump is actually doing. And I've said this time and time again, put Trump, Putin, and Z in the same room. I said this before Trump was elected president. Put them in the same room and they will change this planet. That happened when North Korea stopped firing its nukes. During the Asian summit, Trump, Putin, and Z were all in the same room. Why do you think the deep state has been pushing the Russian collusion thing so hard? Who's running the deep state? The Vatican. Why are they running the Russian collusion thing? Why do they want Trump out of office? Because he's going to expose the man of lawlessness, the prophecy, as I mentioned earlier in 2 Thessalonians. Okay, we got all this stuff going on. What else happened in 2000? Something happened in 2012 and 2013 that nobody ever realized. Or maybe I should say something didn't happen. What didn't happen on 12/21/2012? 12/21/2000. How about that?
Right.
The world didn't end. What happened on December 16th, 2013?
Well, if that was another date the world was supposed to end, we're still here.
Yeah, but you know what actually happened prior to that? See, the world was supposed to not necessarily end, but they miscalculated on the long Mayan Bak tomb, the long Bak tomb. And I don't know, maybe they forgot to carry the zero or something, you know. Who knows?
Right.
But the actual date that was given, the correct date, was 12/16/2013. Okay. What happened? World still didn't come to an end. What were we supposed to see? What was the sign of the end of the Long Bach tomb? We were supposed to see the sign of the return of Quetzalcoatl, the Mayan snake god in the sky, weren't we? Right? We were supposed to see that. And you know, it's interesting. If Comet Ison wasn't destroyed, and it was destroyed not by the sun, we can prove that. Just by observation, we can prove that. I'll explain that in a second. But if Ison wasn't destroyed on December 16th, just after the sun set, it would have been perfectly aligned between Earth and Venus, creating what would have looked like the Mayan snake god returning. It would have looked like a giant exclamation point in the sky. Venus was setting in the evening sky, was setting just after sunset. And Ison would have been right between us and Venus. And it would have been this long tail coming off of Venus, this bright, bright, bright star or planet in the evening sky. What happened? Now, the reason I say that Ison was destroyed, and it's obvious. The tail of a comet always blows with the solar winds. Doesn't matter where it's located, doesn't matter where it is in its orbit. The tail always blows away from the sun. As Comet Ison, you can go look at the videos of this because the Soho observatories were showing this. When Comet Ison came around the backside of the sun, the coma of the comet was blowing against the solar wind. It was blowing perpendicular to the solar wind. So some force had to be greater than the solar wind to be blowing the coma of Ison perpendicular to it. And even when that was observed, I was listening to, I guess it was NASA's astronomers as they were observing this whole thing. I was watching it live. And when Ison came out, they said, something doesn't appear to look quite right. Comet Ison may not have survived its orbit around the backside of the sun. Well, wait a minute. Of course something wasn't right. The cone was blowing in the wrong direction, you idiot. Well, he wasn't an idiot. He just couldn't say that.
Right.
You know? But he knew that something was wrong. The coma was blowing in the wrong direction. What was powerful enough to blow the coma against the solar wind? An alien weapon? What happened earlier that year? Have any idea?
No.
Well, let's see. On the 15th of December, the day before the alignment between what would have been Ison and Venus, Nelson Mandela was put in the ground. You know, the guy who died on June 26th, the night of Malta, the subject of the Pope, who died on June 26th after they pulled his life support system, after they unplugged him from the wall. And then the next day, oh, no, he's better. As a matter of fact, he may go home this week. What, do they got a big ice chest in the house? They're going to keep this guy on ice for the night? Yeah, because they're getting ready for something. Now, the world didn't come to an end on 12/21/2012, but something happened both in 2012 and again in 2013, which gave us something that some people are very aware of and have done a lot of research in. It gave us the Mandela effect. Now, you know what happened on December? The Mandela ritual funeral, and I suggest everybody go to Wikipedia, because that's probably the easiest thing to do. Go look at the guest list. Go look at who went to that funeral. All dignitaries. Of course they would be. Ex-presidents. Makes you wonder why Clinton, Obama, and Bush were all in Tanzania that summer, after Mandela was dead. How did they all wind up in Tanzania? Interesting. Don't know. But how did they all wind up in Africa? You got two previous presidents and a sitting president all in Africa at the same time. Okay. Something bigger happened? Here's a question for you. You got Obama at Mandela's funeral giving his speech, the most protected man on the planet, next to maybe the Pope. But Obama's got to be the most protected man on the planet, wouldn't you think?
Yeah.
Secret Service, intelligence agencies, everybody working for him.
Definitely.
How does a crazy man who committed a necktie murder, which is essentially igniting a tire around somebody's neck on fire and burning them to death, how is he too crazy to stand trial for this atrocity, but yet he's allowed to stand next to the President of the United States at the Mandela ritual funeral and sign in a sign language that nobody on the planet can understand? My mother is a certified American Sign Language translator. Both her parents were deaf, and she couldn't understand a thing that this guy was signing. She said it's all gibberish and nonsense. Oh, he did sign the devil horns quite nicely. Interesting. Okay. So explain this to me. How does this guy get to be standing next to the president? He set a fire on tire around somebody who was alive and was deemed too crazy to stand trial. So they sent him to an insane asylum. So let's take this guy and put him right next to Obama. Now, after the fact, he claimed that the stadium that everybody was in at the time was filled with angels. As he was translating, you could see all these angels flying around the stadium. Okay. Told you he was crazy. Well, insane is a difference. You see, here's an interesting thing. There was a report that came out later on in December that said that during the Mandela ritual funeral, there was an alleged signing of a treaty with an off-planet entity known as Marduk. Marduk is the Babylonian name for Anu, the god of a flat, domed earth. Think about that. A flat, domed earth? People believe the earth is flat? Yeah, vehemently so. We've been lied to by NASA. Never a straight answer. However, I've seen the curvature of the earth myself, and in my personal observation and my study of physics and astronomy and earth sciences and the models in which I've also seen, guess what? The earth is round, not quite round. It's more like potato shape, but with the oceans filled up. It's a sphere. Now, oddly enough, the models also show that it could be hollow along the axis. Think about that. Yeah, so it could be. I was never a proponent of hollow earth, but the models show that the earth could be hollow along the axis, which means from the North Pole to the South Pole, there's some sort of a tunnel, or at least very porous, filled with large pockets, caverns. Very possible. So, I don't know, it's taken underground somewhere. There's a lot of people believe that the earth is hollow, too. It's basically a giant Dyson sphere with a population outside and a population inside. There's some reason that a lot of things are being kept secret in Antarctica, and there's a reason why the South Pole's got a no-fly zone over it, and there's a reason why Google Earth will not show you the South Pole pixelated out. So much for that. On December 10th, 2013, during the ritual funeral, and here's the kicker. Remember CERN? I'm going to bring CERN into this. What
Sure.
was CERN supposed to do? Open a portal between Earth and some other dimension and release these aliens?
Well, that's one theory, yeah.
Yeah, they did it. They did it in 2012 and they confirmed it. They did it again in 2013. And the scientists who did it were given the Nobel Peace Prize on December 10th, 2013, right smack in the middle of the Mandela ritual funeral. Think about that coincidence.
So they are possibly trying to summon these old Anunnaki gods, is what you're saying.
No, what they did is they opened up the gates of Tartarus. If you go into the book of Enoch, and Jude and Peter both talked about this, the Tartarus seems to be a prison dimension. It's a dimension which seems to be separate from the actual, technically, 11 dimensions in which we live. The dimension of time is the 11th dimension, which is a variable across all dimensions, just as time is a variable across planet Earth based on the vibration of planet Earth itself. What used to be a 24-hour day is probably closer to 15 hours, and so that's why there's never enough time in the day and why we always seem exhausted and worn out. And that has to do with Earth changes and the actual Schumann resonance of Earth. What would change the Schumann resonance? What would change our time-space continuum? Something massive coming this way. Think about it. More evidence for a brown dwarf star.
So is this connected? The CERN possible opening of portals and the brown dwarf?
Yeah, because what the scientists got were it was the Higgs boson particle, or the God particle that they found. How do you find something that small? You destroy it. And it was during this process that they opened up the gates of Tartarus, I'm convinced. Because they did it in 2012, confirmed it in 2013. We got the Mandela effect as a residual, but essentially they plucked a hair of God. They caused a rift in the time-space continuum. And so now in the James Bond movie Moonraker, the girl no longer has braces on her teeth. A lot of things. Wine put into new bottles. You can't put new wine into old wine bottles. No, wait a minute. It was old wine skins. They didn't invent wine bottles back in the 1st century. Let's see. What else happened? My favorite. The lion shall lay down with the lamb. Yes, the wolf shall lay down with the lamb.
Right.
Now, the wolf shall... How the heck did that happen? Go to Google Images, type in Isaiah 11:6, or just type in, the lion shall lay down with the lamb. It's going to bring you pictures up. It'll bring you one picture of a lion laying down with the lamb, and they'll quote Isaiah. And it says, and the wolf shall lay down with the lamb. Wait a minute. Who screwed up here? So how did that happen? You see, when they destroyed the God particle, when they found the God particle and destroyed it, they did so in the experiment to open up the gateway to Tartarus. They had to get through to a different dimension, and so they had to create that much energy. They did it twice, and hence all of the watchers who were thrown into Tartarus, the gods. We go back to Genesis. The sons of the true gods saw that earth women were hot. So they came and they took wives for themselves. I'm not exactly quoting it correctly, but they saw they were beautiful in appearance. They were hot. And so they took wives for themselves, all who they chose.
Now you're talking about the fallen angels.
Yes. Well, there's two groups of fallen angels. I'm talking about the watchers that from the book of Enoch,
right?
Or the sons of the true God prior to Noah. The book of Enoch.
You consider these different from the Anunnaki?
No, they're probably, well, see, here's the situation. We give these names, the Anunnaki, alien life forms from Pleiades, from Sirius, and it's supposed to be 90 different species of grays or something ridiculous like that. I think the grays are genetically engineered, personally.
I agree with that.
But let's go back to the scriptures. The scriptures speak of 4 different life forms. Angels, which are messengers of God. They're not a specific life form. They're a general category. Interdimensionals, okay, we can call them that. But we also are told about seraphs, cherubs, and archangels, or at least an archangel. And we know that they are given rank. We can go to the book of Daniel when the only angel besides Raphael, and he's named in the Catholic Douay version and some other versions, but if you go by the standard King James or what are most accepted Bibles now, the only angel that's ever named besides Michael, or who is actually Jesus, and a lot of people freak out when I say that, but Michael means who's like Yahweh, who's like Yahuwah. In other words, mini-me, the spitting image of. Gabriel went to deliver a message to the prophet Daniel, but he was late in delivering the message. He couldn't get past who? The Prince of Persia. Now, we don't know exactly what the Prince of Persia was, but obviously he was ruling over the Persian Empire during this time. And so Gabriel had to get Michael the Archangel to fight with the Prince of Persia so he could deliver the message. And after he was done delivering the message to Daniel, he said, okay, well, I got to go. I got to go back and fight the Prince of Persia again. And that's, now who's the Prince of Persia? I see, we don't know, but he's given the title. We go to the book of Ezekiel, very extraterrestrial book, and we are told about an entity who was once known as the covering cherub of Eden. You want to bet it's a reptilian?
Very interesting. Very interesting.
You see, because we get a serpent. What's a serpent? Wouldn't a reptilian be a serpent, or a reptilian? A serpent would have to be a reptilian, right?
Yes.
Man, just think if the dinosaurs weren't wiped out, what would we look like today? Maybe a little scaly, a little green. Think about that. Genetic engineering. You work with what's left on the planet.
Now, would you consider these reptilians to be what the ancients called demons?
No, because we'd have different ranks. You see, we get down to the Nephilim. And here's an interesting thing about the Nephilim. The Nephilim are the children that were born to the Watchers. Okay? Now, a lot of people get this screwed up. If you read the book of Enoch, Enoch is a prophet from Yahweh to the Watchers. And his job is to say, hey, you guys screwed up. You left your post. You got involved with women. That's interspecies breeding. Okay? You created this hybrid offspring. You go to the 6th chapter of Genesis, as you're reading, I forget exactly the verse, but it says that God felt hurt at his heart that he even created man because things had gotten so bad. Interspecies breeding. My daddy's an alien. I was raped by an alien. An alien impregnated me. I gave birth to an alien. How many times have you heard that from women who are totally convinced?
Right.
Women who are totally convinced. Think about that for a moment. Okay, so now we've got, if we go back to the book of Enoch, Enoch was told to tell the Watchers that they were going to be thrown into the prison dimension of Tartarus. And they made the petition back to Enoch to ask Yahweh, because they weren't on speaking terms at this point, could we take our children with us? And the answer was no. On earth they were begotten, on earth they will stay. Now, the height of these giants wasn't like 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet. Think of Cyclops in Greek mythology. 50 feet, 75 feet, maybe 100 feet tall. Yeah. Those are the numbers that are given in the book of Enoch. There would be no mistaking these things. No, those are genetic variations. Look at the genetic variations that we have on the planet today. I like that there's a movie like from the 30s, maybe even earlier, maybe from the 20s. There's this big, huge Oriental guy. I mean, he's got to be like 12 feet tall and 500 pounds or more. Just everybody else is up to his waist or below his waist. Now, wouldn't you consider him a giant?
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, but now what happens, think of that 1950s scientific movie, The Atomic Man or whatever it was. I don't know if you remember that. That was one of my favorites growing up. It's where this guy gets irradiated, and then there was the 50-foot woman, that was the sequel, the 50-foot woman. So yeah, that's what we're talking about. Think if the earth was populated by something that big. Nephilim actually translates into fellers of men. In other words, like a logger fells trees. Yes. Bullies. There's that one line in Jason and the Argonauts where the Cyclops has got him and he's eating him and he says, these Greeks are tough. Yeah, think about that. Think about that for a minute. Anyway, that's how things were. Now, we don't see these giants today, but what do we hear of? You brought up something very interesting in the beginning of the segment, how the demonic and the satanic is being brought into our society through symbolism, through symbols.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, that's what they use. If I paint one of the examples that I use is the swastika in Letters to Earth. I said, if you saw a building with a swastika on it, what would you think of? The first thing that came to your mind? Nazi Germany, right?
Yeah, Nazi Germany.
Nazis. Okay, good. Go to India. If you walked into a building that had a swastika on it, what would it be?
Yeah, isn't it a symbol
a Buddhist temple?
Oh,
it's a Buddhist temple that you're going into. Yes, it's a sun symbol.
Yes.
It's a good luck symbol. You see, so all the symbols, different symbols mean different things to different people. It's how they're used and how they're translated. Now, does that make the swastika something bad? No. It's still the same symbol, oriented from the same place. But it's everything that we associate to it. Right? Yes. So now when we flip over our dollar bill and we look at the back and we see the pyramid with the all-seeing eye, most people don't even pay attention to that unless they know what that all-seeing eye is. Yeah. That's Satan's eye. That's the devil's eye. That is the eye of the head of the satanic empire looking out over the rest of his realm. And that's labeled in many different ways. Now, here's the interesting thing. Satan plays the same position as God or Father Yahweh or Yahuwah. So there are sub-gods to him, lower gods, hence the Anunnaki, hence the Egyptian gods, the Assyrian gods, the Greek gods, the Roman gods, the gods that we worship today, gods of entertainment, gods of sports, gods of politics, gods of whatever we feel, gods of the LBGT movement, gods of I want to have sex with children movement, right. Whatever the heck these weirdos want. And yeah, I'm calling them weirdo. It's one thing, and I don't care, if you feel that you're in love with someone of the same sex as you, I'm not going to get on your case and say, oh, that's a sin. That's between you and God and whoever you're with. You go parade your junk down Main Street in my town, and I'm going to have something to say about it. I don't go down to anybody else's town and parade my junk out for everybody to see. I don't tell everybody about my bedroom exploitations. And I don't want to hear anybody else's. And don't try to influence my children because you like to go do things with animals or something. Because that's next. Didn't Canada make bestiality legal?
I know one country did. And I mean, there's so much being normalized now that shouldn't be, that it's just ridiculous, the things they're trying to normalize. You still there, Peter?
Let's take a look at New York State. What did they try to pass? Just recently. Oh, no, they did pass what they tried to pass. Late-term abortion. The woman can be in labor and decide that Okay, I don't want this child, if there's a problem, whatever. I can't afford it. Kill it.
Right, and there was some kind of celebration behind it.
Yeah, they lit up the World Trade Center, or what is it, One World Trade Center Plaza, whatever the heck it is, that their new idol, their new
Their new occult
pillar.
symbol.
Yeah, yeah, and all that is nothing but a male phallus. That's nothing but, and think about this. Where do we see it? Where do we see these pillars, like the Washington Monument? These are all
The
obelisks.
pillars
These are
of
all,
Freemasonry, the obelisks in Egypt.
these were set up as phallic symbols. The pillars of Baal is where we know them from the best. The pillars of Baal set upon high places. Baal was a god who, he was a fertility god essentially, but he was a very high ranking. And so they would hold these orgies in the spring to induce Baal. They said that the rain was Baal's sperm, and it would come down and fertilize the ground and make everything grow. And so they would have these drunken hallucinogenic orgies. And guess what? If you were, a young, fresh, thing just on now coming into womanhood, as they say, old enough to bleed, old enough to breed. And so guess what? You got to offer the first fruits of your belly. You lost your virginity, you were inseminated during a drunken orgy, and now you get to sacrifice your child to Molech in the fires with the beating drums behind to drown out the babies crying as it's being burned alive. And the archaeologists have found these sites throughout Israel where the Canaanites were carrying on their Baal worship and their worship to Molech. And they said that they recovered over 40,000 remains of infants. 80% were under 3 months old. 80% of the burned remains that they were able to recover were under 3 months old. Think about that. Number one, child sacrifice, child pedophilia. When I was back in Pennsylvania, they interviewed a chief of police in a neighboring county. They asked him, what were the two biggest crimes that his department had to face? And he said drug abuse, opium related, and pedophilia was number two. What are the two biggest money makers on the planet? Drugs, human trafficking.
Definitely.
Think about that.
Now,
who's promoting it?
The Vatican, the deep state.
Yeah, now who are they sacrificing the children to? Let's take a look at this for a second. I'm going to say one word, loosh, Loosh. We all know about adrenochrome.
Yes.
Adrenochrome is what is produced in the blood. But what is loosh? Loosh is, and this is why it's a ritual sacrifice. They separate the soul from the body, but not completely.
The form of
energy
that they feed off of, right?
There you go. It's sold as the highest selling, most profitable drug in the cosmos. And these alien life forms feed on it like it was pure heroin. Yeah, because they're consuming the innocent soul of a child belonging to Father Yahweh. So we can go back to Genesis, the first chapter. God said, let us create man in our image. And so in God's image, he created them male and female. Or maybe I should say genetically engineered them male and female. And we go and we look at, and this is what separates us from the rest of everything on the planet. And I'm talking about the Adamites. When Adam was created, he wasn't genetically engineered. He was created out of the dust of the ground, out of the elements themselves. And Father Yahweh blew the breath of a living soul. You see, the body is a vessel, like a ship is. An ocean liner, we all go out, people love to go on cruises. Ocean liners now hold, what, 2,000 people on a cruise? I mean, these things are like huge hotels on water. Well, that's kind of how our body is. It's a vessel. And because we're dealing with interdimensionals, they can possess our bodies. And so people will either get possessed by lowlifes, like the demons, or they'll be possessed by more powerful entities in the archonic class. You don't get up into the ruling class until you're dealing with people like, according to Princess Diana, both the Queen of England and Prince Philip shape-shifted right in front of her eyes from the form that we know them as into reptilian-like form and back again. And they told her if she ever told anybody, they would kill her. Well, we know she's dead. What a lot of people may not know is that while she was pregnant with Prince William, she tried to commit suicide 3 times. Why would a mother try to kill herself in the efforts to kill her infant, her unborn infant? She referred to the royal family as reppies. And if you listen to what Rihanna says, who claims to be, I believe it's Rihanna, who claims to be possessed by another entity when she's on stage, that it's not really her that's singing, it's this other entity. She says something that I said back quite a while ago based on research. As a matter of fact, there's over 250,000 hits on it. Just look up Peter Kling, Prince William, Antichrist. I think we did that video in 2011. Anyway, she made the claim that Prince William was indeed the next Antichrist and that he was possessed by a very powerful entity and that he was followed by a interdimensional entourage. I forget the exact words that she used, but essentially he was followed around by demons and other spirits. Okay, that's what Rihanna said. Look it up on the internet. You can find it. Don't take my word for it. Never take my word for anything. Do your own research. The reason why I say that is when anyone can listen to me and say, oh, that guy's a nut. Okay, fine, whatever. You do the research, you find the answers, and you make it your own. You see, now you own it. Now it's your story. It's not my story because I did the research. I've been doing the research for almost 60 years.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I always tell people. Don't take my word for it. Please do your own research. Peter, we got just a few minutes left. For the last few minutes, kind of maybe give us what we can do as individuals to combat this evil and where you see this going maybe in the next couple of years.
Well, forget religion. We all got to but it's time to come to Jesus. That's kind of a strange way to put it. Now, it's time for us to find our spiritual side. You see, I mentioned that about Adamites. It gets broken down, though. If you go to Genesis 3:15, it talks about, this is the first prophecy that's given. It's Yahweh. It finds out they ate the fruit. They sucked in that genetic virus that destroyed their DNA. They were going to die now. And he gives this prophecy, and he's first talking to the serpent, the reptilian. And most likely, this is the head of genetic engineering, Satan himself. And he said, because you did this, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed, and he will bruise you in the head, and you will bruise him in the heel. Now, if you get a bruised heel, it's going to be painful. It's going to be painful for a while, a few weeks, until it finally heals up. But if you get bruised in the head, that's a death blow. That's brain hemorrhage time. You're going to die. And so that's pretty much what happens. But now here's the thing. The woman's seed, the serpent seed, there's 2 seeds. There's 2 genetic strains on this earth. And we're pretty more weighted in one area, and some of us are more weighted in the other area. And so that's what's happening, is that there's this influence, the satanic influence upon this serpent's seed. And so that's why we're seeing this evil come about now. They're all, it's like the weeds, literally the weeds growing in the field of wheat. On the other side, we see the woman's seed. The woman's seed is where the Messiah came through. And that seed, while we suffer, we get bruised in the heel. It's not a death blow. So hold on. And it's what happens is that we become activated and we become aware of what's around us. We start doing the research. We start realizing the truth. And we start growing. And that's what we have to do. It's a spiritual connection. We are not just physical humans. At the soul level, we are children of the Creator. We create ourselves. Sometimes we don't like what we created, but we have the power to create a fantastic future. And that's something that I've been working on personally myself since 2015. And it gets better every year. I can't believe the results that were. Yes, I can. And the reason why I can believe the results is that I've created it. I've foreseen it. I see it first and then work toward that goal. Faith without works is dead. If you can see it, you can create it. A lot of us were hungry today. When we were hungry, we thought about something to eat. And we thought, wow, I'm going to go make something tasty. And so we get up and we go do it. And we satisfy our desire, we satisfy our hunger. But if you don't get off your butt, you don't get up and you make yourself something to eat, you can picture what you want in your mind until you starve to death. I promise it will never manifest itself in front of you. Unless you say, hey, honey, can you make me a BLT? Then it may manifest itself in front of you. But outside of that, without somebody actually working in your direction, we can't create our future. It takes work. Nothing happens overnight, except for one thing, change. Change happens in an instant, but most of the time we don't recognize it.
Yeah, you're right. I do the same things, with all aspects of my life that I want to change. I envision it and I actually work towards the goal to do it. You can't just look at it and just hope that it happens. That's so true.
It's like people who buy a lottery ticket hoping that they hit the lottery. If they put but now I actually know people, well, not personally, I heard of a story. This is what I was actually going through at one of my meditation classes, that they actually programmed winning the lottery and they did hit it. But they actually they started living that life. They lived the life as if they already hit the lottery. And so they actually ate, slept, and dreamt of doing that. And eventually they hit it. It took them about 6 months, but they hit it.
Very interesting.
So you can do it because we created a cosmic level. And so now what we need to do is be aware, number one, of our situation and then create the way out of it, because cities are going to become death traps. We have time to prepare. It's like waiting for a hurricane to hit. Well, go have your hurricane party if you want, but I'm going to board up my house.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you see, that's actually what I did. I was walking the dog one day and I found a heroin needle on the side of the road. And I thought, yeah, it's definitely time to get out of this neighborhood. And that's what I did. You see, I headed to the mountains. I got out of the city and I headed to the mountains. And now I don't have that issue here. I'm not saying it's not here. My closest neighbor is a quarter mile away. And I moved to a state that has the oldest population in the country. So the older the population, the less drug abuse you're going to have. No, it's still there. It still affects all of us. But now's the time to prepare, because we can see these things actually happening. We can point to the prophecy. We can point to the fulfillment or how it's being fulfilled. And the things that I talked about tonight are just scraping the tip of the iceberg. But we're there. We're in transition. Now's the time to start planning our future.
Very good. Thank you so much, Peter. I want to thank you again for joining us tonight. That was great information, and we're definitely going to have you back on again.
It's Chris. Anyone who writes me, just spell it out, ONE @peterkling.com, and makes a request, I will send a free copy, a free PDF copy of Letters to Earth. If you'd like to make a donation, go to peterkling.com and make a donation. But I will send you a free copy, regardless of whether you make a donation or not, because the truth is just that important. So with that, I'm going to say love and blessings to all. Chris, thank you for having me on the show, and I certainly look forward to coming back again.
Awesome, Peter. You have a great night.
Thank you very much, Chris.
All right, bye.
And I guess we are done.
Yes, we are out. That was excellent. Thank you so much, Peter.
Very good.
Send you the YouTube link as soon as I have that up.
Super.
All right, that was
excellent.
Awesome. You have
excellent.
a good night, and we'll do.
You too. Thank you very much. Absolutely. Give me a call whenever you want.
Will do.
Peace.